All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling one of the most influential, and let's be honest, one of the most challenging ethical systems ever thought up. We're going to get into the world of Kantian ethics and try to figure out what it means to build a moral code based not on faith, not on feelings, but on pure, universal reason. And this quote right here is the perfect place to start. For Immanuel Kant, the whole point of the Enlightenment was about humanity finally growing up. Learning to think for ourselves without just blindly following some outside authority. This one idea, it's pretty much the key that unlocks his entire moral philosophy.
So, to really get what Kant was trying to do, we first have to understand the problem he was facing. Why did Europe, in his mind, need a brand new way of figuring out right from wrong?
I mean, just try to imagine it. You're living in a Europe that has been absolutely ravaged by centuries of religious warfare. If my morality comes from my faith and your morality comes from your totally different faith, we have zero common ground. We can't agree on the basics. Kant saw this chaos and realized humanity desperately needs a basis for ethics that everyone, everywhere, can agree on, regardless of what they happen to believe.
So Kant proposed a pretty revolutionary solution. He wanted to completely shift the foundation of morality. Instead of basing it on divine commands, which obviously differ from religion to religion, he wanted to ground it in reason, something he believed was universal to all human beings. This was a huge deal. It was a move away from external laws being pushed on us and toward a system that empowers each of us to figure out the moral law for ourselves, just by using logic.
And you have to understand, Kant's ambition here was absolutely massive. Just as scientists like Newton had discovered these universal objective laws that govern the physical world, like gravity, Kant believed he could use reason to discover universal, objective laws that govern the moral world. These wouldn't be based on your feelings or your desires, but on pure, cold logic that would apply to everyone, everywhere.
And this brings us right to the heart of his system, which all starts with two really key ideas: duty and something Kant called the good will. For Kant, most of the things we think of as good, things like happiness, intelligence, even courage, are only good sometimes, right? You can be a happy thief or a courageous villain, but a good will, that is, the pure intention to do the right thing just because it's the right thing, that's the only thing that is good in all circumstances, without any exceptions. For him, this is the absolute foundation of all morality. And this is where it starts to get a little tricky. For an action to have true moral worth in Kant's view, it can't be motivated by anything else. Not by fear of punishment, not by hope for a reward, not even by warm feelings of compassion. You have to do your duty for one reason and one reason only, out of pure respect for the moral law itself.
Let's use his famous shopkeeper example. You've got two shopkeepers. Both give their customers fair prices, but for Kant, only shopkeeper A is acting morally. Why? Because his motivation is pure duty. He thinks it's the fair and right thing to do, period. Shopkeeper B is just acting out of self-interest. He wants to build a good reputation so he can get more business. So even though his action looks right on the outside, because it doesn't come from duty, Kant says it has no real moral worth at all.
Okay, so if it's all about doing our duty, how do we actually figure out what our duty is? Well, Kant created a famous tool for this exact problem, a kind of universal test for morality that he called the categorical imperative.
So first, we have to get the difference between two kinds of shoulds. Most of the shoulds we follow are hypothetical. They're conditional commands like, if you want to be healthy, then you should exercise. It all depends on a desire. But moral commands for Kant are categorical. They're totally unconditional. It's not if you want to be a good person, then you shouldn't lie. It's just, you should not lie, period. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Kant's own words really hammer this point home. If an action is just a tool for getting something else, the command is hypothetical. But if the action is good in and of itself, then the command is categorical. And that's morality. So how does this test work? First, you state your rule, or what Kant called a maxim. For instance, I will make a lying promise to get a loan. Step 2, you universalize it. You imagine a world where everybody always follows that rule. And third, you check for a logical contradiction. In a world where everyone made lying promises, the very idea of a promise would collapse. It would become meaningless. The action contradicts itself. It becomes impossible. And that is how you know it's immoral.
Kant also gave us another really powerful way to think about the categorical imperative. It's often called the humanity formulation, and it commands us to recognize the inherent dignity and value in all rational beings. Basically, people are not just tools to be used for our own projects, they are ends in themselves.
But notice the super important nuance here. Kant isn't saying you can't use people at all. When you order from a waiter, you're using them as a means to get food. The key word is merely. An action becomes immoral when you treat that person merely as a means, like an object that exists only for your benefit, completely stripped of their own dignity and their own goals.
Okay, so we've got the system. Find your duty using the categorical imperative, and then do it out of a pure goodwill. It sounds clean, it sounds rational, but let's see what happens when we really put it under pressure with some classic ethical dilemmas.
And here is the first really big problem. Kant's system gives us these absolute, exceptionless duties. But what happens when two of those absolute duties come into direct conflict? What are you supposed to do then?
The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre gave us this classic, gut-wrenching example. A young man during wartime feels a duty to his country to go fight, but he also feels a duty to stay home and care for his ailing mother. Both actions seem to pass the universalizability test. The thing is, he can't do both. So what does Kant's ethics tell him to do? The answer is, it doesn't. It offers no help. It just leaves him stranded.
And that leads us to the second, and maybe the most famous, objection to Kant. His system is so focused on the action and the intention that it seems to completely ignore the real-world results of those actions.
This is the ultimate stress test. A murderer is at your door asking where your friend is hiding. According to Kant, you have a perfect, absolute duty not to lie. Lying fails the test, so you have to tell the truth even if it leads directly to your friend's death. And for many people, this is where the whole theory just breaks down, because it clashes so violently with our basic intuition to just prevent harm. So, with these major challenges, you might be wondering why on earth we're still talking about Kant over 200 years later. Well, the thing is, despite its problems, his philosophy has had a profound, lasting impact on the way we all think about the world.
I mean, Kant's ideas are far from just some academic exercise. His core concept, that every single person has an inherent dignity and must be treated as an end, not a means, that is the philosophical backbone of modern human rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a deeply Kantian document. His vision even prefigured international bodies like the UN. But those critiques are still really powerful. The philosopher Philippa Foot argued that Kant never really proves why it's irrational to disobey a moral command. She said he's just trying to give the word ought a kind of magic force, making it seem like it comes from pure reason when, in reality, it probably just comes from our upbringing and our society.
In the end, Kant leaves us wrestling with this central tension. In our messy, complicated world, what's the true source of morality? Is it the purity of our intentions and our absolute commitment to duty? Or is it the real-world consequences of our actions? That's the challenge Kant puts to all of us.